guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Becca and today I have the announcement for the month-long Bookoplathon. So if you guys are unfamiliar with Bookopoly or the Bookoplathon, this is a readathon that is based on the TBR game that I play every single month. I will link the Bookopoly playlist up here for anybody who is unfamiliar and wants to get acquainted with what Bookopoly actually is. But this is the readathon version of my TBR game. We have had two 48-hour rounds, one was completely live, and last year we did one month-long round, and I am here to announce the second month-long round of this readathon. And like all of the past rounds of the Bookoplathon, I am not going to be giving you any prompts in this video. You are going to be generating them all for yourself. So getting into the important information for this readathon, it is going to happen between the 1st of September and the 30th of September in your time zone. So midnight, as soon as it turns the 1st, right through to the end of the 30th is when this readathon will take place. In the description box of this video, you are going to find all of the information that you need for this readathon. We have a Twitter page, which is at Becca's Bookopoly. We also have a Discord that is linked down below. And I also have a Google Drive folder with all of the documents and information that you will need. In that Google Drive folder, you are going to find your 4-page Bookoplathon guide. This has, once again, all of the information you need. It has the dates, the Twitter, the Discord, all of the rules, the introduction, and it also has a breakdown of every single space on the board. So if, while you are playing, you need some clarification on something, it is all included in this document, and there are also examples for some of the spaces on the board that are more open to interpretation. So because you are taking this game and you are playing it yourself, there are a couple of things that you are going to need. The first thing you are going to need, of course, is your printable version of the board. This year I commissioned this to be illustrated by Emma, whose Instagram is mjprints, and I will link Emma's Instagram down in the description box for you guys if you want to go check her out. This is for you to print out and play on. If you can't print this out, if you don't have access to a printer, then you do have a couple of options. Your first option, which is the easiest, is to play digitally, where you can bring up the digital version of the board and Google yourself a dice rolling app so that you can move around on the board. Another option that is extremely popular, or was extremely popular last year, is that a lot of people copy the board down into their bullet journal and play on the bullet journal, and some people even make full-scale replicas of the board. So whichever option suits your needs, just go with it. There's not many rules to this readathon. I just give you the resources and you can do whatever you like with them. You will also need a counter. I use a magnetic bookmark, but you can use whatever you have to hand to count the spaces on the board. You are also going to need 2 6-sided dice. It is important that you have 2. If you only have 1, you could just roll it twice for every move, or you can also install a virtual dice rolling software onto your phone, or I think Google might do dice rolling as well. You are also going to have to prepare your own community shelf and chance cards. There are 2 printable options in the Google Drive folder. This is the mini version. This fits the mini version of the board, so if you're printing the board onto A4 paper, this is the one that you are going to need. On this one sheet of paper, you have 20 of each of the cards. I use 16 in my deck, but I play all year, so the chances are you aren't going to need 16 of each card. If you would like to fill them out, then go ahead and do so, but you are also free to use as many or as little cards as you would like in your deck. As well as that, we also have the larger printable version. This is the size that fits my regular Bookopoly board, so if you are going to recreate it or you just want larger cards, then this is also available, and this has 5 of each card on it. So you're going to need to print these out and prepare them yourselves. The community shelf cards are a selection of prompts, so if there are any prompts that you wanted to see on the board, you can write those down. There's also no specific genre spaces on the board, so you could have, like, if you read a lot of fantasy, one of your prompts could be read a fantasy, and if you land in a community shelf space, you are going to have to draw one of these cards and fulfill the prompt. Now, the chance cards are going to be a list of book titles, and when you land on the chance space, you will pull a chance card and read whatever book is on the card. For extra fun, I would recommend that you have an even amount of books that you are desperate to read and an even amount of books that you don't really want to read in September. Like, you may want to read them, but now is just not the time. Just to make the stage stakes a little bit higher. That is the way that I play. And of course, if you do not have access to a printer to print these, you can either make your own cards, or you can write a list of prompts for your community shelf cards and a list of books for your chance cards, assign each option a number, and use a random number generator to select which one of the prompts or the books it is that you're going to be picking if you land on the spaces on the board. As with last year, there are also going to be two ways to play Bookopoly throughout September. The first way is the way that I play, and that is to make your TBR at the beginning of the month. I personally roll 5 times plus doubles because 5 is a number of books that is very achievable for me to read in a month. However, if you read like 25 books a month, feel free to do 25 rolls, and if you only read like 2 books a month, feel free to do 2 rolls. It is completely up to you. The other way to play is the way that is more appealing to mood readers, and that is to roll as you go. So if you choose this option, at the beginning of September, you will roll for your first prompt, you will choose a book to fulfill that prompt and read it, and then when you have finished, you can come back and roll for another prompt. So now for the rules, there is only a handful of these. The first one is that everybody is going to be starting on the go space on the board. Every year when I start my year-long game of Bookopoly, I start on the go space, so that is where we will all be starting. The second rule is that you need 2 6-sided die to move around the board. The reason for this is that if you roll a double, which means that the same number is on both of the dice, you have to add a book to your TBR. So for example, if I rolled 2 5s, that would be a double, and my normal 5 rolls would then go up to 6 because I would have to roll again and add an extra book to my TBR. And the final rule is more of an option in case you're really stuck. If you land on a square on the board and you absolutely do not have a book to fill it, you can't think of a single thing that you would like to read for that prompt, you have the option of rolling again. However, if you do that, you then have to pick 2 books for the next prompt that you land on. I included this rule last year. It's not a rule that I normally play in my TBR game, but it is an option in case you land on something that you really can't or don't want to fill. But it also stops people from abusing this power because it has some pretty hefty consequences. So now that we've covered the rules and everything you will need to participate in this readathon, it is time for me to reveal the 2021 BookoplAthon board. Okay, so welcome to your 2021 BookoplAthon board. Last year when I made the board, I made it as simple as I possibly could, and there was absolutely no way that it could be as simple as it was last year without us having exactly the same prompts. So a lot of these are open to your interpretation. Whatever interpretation you feel is right is absolutely fine. And also please remember that if you need a refresher or any further clarification, the Bookopoly guide is available for you, which will give you some examples on how you might be able to fulfill the prompts that are more open to interpretation. So I have kept a few of the spaces the same. You guys will remember them if you participated last year. But I'm going to start off by going through all of the property spaces, and then I'll come back and fill in all of the corners, the train stations, etc. Like last year, all of the properties are grouped by theme. I will tell you the theme before I go into each individual space. And like last year, the only differences within this theme is that the blues and the browns are parallel to each other. So these are the same as they were last year. The very first space is lowest rated, and this is mirrored by highest rated on the blue space. And for this one, you are going to go to your Goodreads TBR, organize everything by average rating, and pick the book with the lowest or highest average rating that you have. For the next ones, we have small book, which is a book under 300 pages, and big book, which is a book over 500 pages. If you do not have books that are that small or that large, then you will read the smallest or largest book you are able to, respectively. For the purple spaces, we have this wonderful work of art, but the theme for this is kind of characters. It's essentially humans, gods, and monsters. So for the human space, you are going to be reading a book that has humans as the main characters. For the god space, you are going to be reading a book that has gods as main characters. However, this is open to interpretation, so you could maybe read a book that is inspired by ancient gods like the Romans, the Greeks, or the Mayans. You could also read a book with god-like characters, so extremely powerful people that are treated as gods. You could read a book that has like a heavy religious presence or religion themes, just features religion in any way, or maybe a book that features a cult. world. For monsters, you can read a book that has any monsters or creatures as characters, like vampires, werewolves, trolls, etc. Or you could read a book that has monstrous characters, so like a serial killer or anybody particularly evil. You could also read a book that has like dark forces or an evil overlord or anything like that. Just do whatever feels right if you cannot fit the prompt exactly. Moving on to the pinks, these ones are hype levels. So we have hyped, new, and who. Hyped is quite obviously a hyped book, so a book that you've heard a lot about and has received glowing reviews. New can be one of two things. It can either be a book that is relatively new, so you haven't heard many people review it yet, or a book that you heard a lot of buzz about when it was first released and you haven't really heard much since. And then for who, we are looking for obscure books, so books that you haven't really heard people talk about, or books that you haven't seen or heard any reviews for. The oranges are inspired by the train stations that were on my 2020 board, and these ones are inspirations. So we have history, which is a book inspired by history. It could be inspired or set in a particular time period. It could be inspired by a particular event, so like an Anastasia retelling or something like that, or you could just go for like a historical setting. For this one, we have myth, lore, legend, and fairy tale. I feel like this is going to predominantly be retellings, but this is anything that has been inspired by mythology, folklore, legends, or fairy tales. And once again, you could read anything that has like a big Roman, Greek, Mayan god presence or inspiration for this one. The last one is current events. This one is anything that is inspired by topics that are relevant to society today and how we live. An example of this would be like racism or homophobia. You do also have the option of reading a non-fiction book for this one as well. Some of my favorite spaces on the boards are the reds. These ones are all vibes, so these ones are really open to interpretation. It is anything that gives you the vibes that are on these spaces. So we have cute vibes. The example I've given in the guide for this is like a book with animals or an animal companion, a children's book, a romance, a book with pastel colors on the cover, just anything that you look at and think is cute, essentially. The next one is opulent, which essentially means anything that's a bit fancy. So we could have books with foiling on the cover, books that follow royalty like kings, queens, princes, and princesses, things like that. You could also have a book that is set in a palace or like a royal court, or anything with a beautiful cover. And the last one, I think a lot of you are gonna like. This one is spooky. So spooky season is coming, so anything that gives you spooky vibes will fit this prompt, like a thriller or a horror, something with a spooky cover, a book with like vampires or witches or the occult as the main themes. With these and all of the ones where I've given examples, obviously you can have other ways to fill this prompt. Those ones are just the examples that I've given. The yellow spaces are quite fun because these are all challenges. So the first one is to steal a book. So for this one, you are going to go to somebody else's TBR and read a book off it. When we get a little bit close to September and TBRs start coming through, I will start to make a YouTube playlist that is full of Bookoplathon TBRs. You will find a link to that in the guide and also the description box of this video. So that should be an easy resource for you to find TBRs, but it does not have to be a Bookoplathon TBR. You can steal from any TBR. The next one is last color. So if you land on this prompt, you have to read a book that has the color of the last book you read or added to your TBR on it. So if you are building a TBR, the book has to have the color of the last book you added to your TBR on it. And if you are rolling as you go, the book has to have the color of the last book you read on it. It doesn't have to be the entire cover. So if you read a book that is mainly purple, it doesn't have to be another mainly purple book. The book would just have to have purple on it. And the final one of these is last letter, first letter, which was inspired by Maddie from Book Browsing Blog and the Whateverthon. And for this one, you have to read a book that starts with the last letter of the last book you read or added to your TBR. So if the last letter of the last book I read was T, the first letter of the book for this prompt has to begin with T. If you are really stuck and you cannot find a book that starts with the last letter of the last book you read, you can then move on to the alphabet. So the letter in the alphabet after T is U, and if I can't find any books beginning with T, then I would move on to U and try and find a book starting with U. The greens were also on last year's Bookopoly board, however I have moved them. They were on the pinks last time, and these are books with different types of representation. So the first one we have is disability and mental health rep. This one is to read a book with a disabled or chronically ill main character, or a book that deals with mental health. For POC rep, this is a book that contains a character of color, and for LGBTQIA+ rep, this is to read a book with members of the LGBTQIA+ community as main characters. So coming back around to the beginning to go through some of these special spaces, some of these are the same as last year. We have Go, which once again is randomize your TBR. You can use either your own TBR, a small stack of books you selected, or your Goodreads TBR, and you need to assign a number unless you're using Goodreads, which assigns numbers for you, and use a random number generator to select the book that you are going to read. Once again, over here we have TBR game as another corner space. Last year we had Cody's Wheel of TBR on this corner. This time we have Gavin's Play Your TBR Right, and for this one you are going to either recreate somebody else's TBR game. If you have your own TBR game, you could play a round of that to fulfill this prompt. Alternatively, if you don't want to go to such extreme efforts, you can go to somebody who has a TBR game and either select one of their prompts to fulfill or take a book directly off their TBR if you would like to read that. For the tax space on this side, we have TBR Veteran. This is the same as last year, and this is to read a book that has been on your TBR for a very long time. We also have the community shelf and chance spaces here. The community shelf is your list of prompts, and your chance cards of course are the books that you really want to read and the books you're less interested in. So if you land on community shelf, you will draw a card from your community shelf stack and fulfill the prompt, and if you land on chance, you will draw a card from your chance stack and read the book. Now for the first of the train stations are all a theme, and the theme of this year's train stations are buzzwords. Thank you Books and Lala for the inspiration for this. So your first train station has a bunch of words on it, and these all relate to people. So we have girl, boy, people, person, son, daughter, man, woman, brother, sister, king, queen, wife, husband, prince, princess, lord, or lady. You need to pick a book that has any of these words in the title. However, go with the theme of the space, not this list of words. So an example is that emperor and empress aren't on this square, but they would still count for the theme. And if you're stuck, you could also use like people's names as buzzwords. Moving on to this side, the train station for this side is colors. So you need to read a book that has any color in the title. So I have a whole list of colors on here. Obviously I could not fit every color in every shade on this square, so you can use any shades of any colors. They don't have to be in context either. An example of this is that raven may mean a bird in the context of the title, however it is also another word for black. For the electric company, we have mood read. This is a very nice space. You can read whatever you want essentially. If you are building a TBR, you can either use it as a free space and pick whatever you want to fill it, or you can just save it until later in the month and just pick up a book on a whim and use it to fulfill this prompt. On this side we have the other train station. This one is times of day. So we have night, day, afternoon, dawn, twilight, evening, midnight, noon, midday, morning, AM, sunset, dark, and light. Now essentially the one that I wanted to do for this was night and day, and any kind of variation of this. So like Sunday has the word day in it, midnight has the word night in it, and then I did add dark and light just because this one is a little bit more specific. So you can have dark, light, and all of their variations like sunlight or darkness. The other space on this side that we haven't covered is the pole pick space. This one is the waterworks. I added this because you guys have a lot of fun with this. You really enjoy the pole pick space. So if you land on this, you are going to grab a stack of books, go to your social media of choice and run a poll, and whichever book wins the poll is the one that you're going to read. For this corner we have Becca Rec. There is in the description box a playlist of all of my recommendations video and favorite books of the year video. So essentially just read any book that I've recommended. You can also just read any book that I've read and enjoyed. So if you know my taste, you know what I've read and you know what I like. And this one is the only new corner we have. This one is feed scroll. So I do have this on my normal Bookopoly board, but you essentially need to go to a social media of your choice. Goodreads and Instagram I would say are best for this, and you need to scroll through your feed on whichever social media you pick and read the first book you see that you own or have access to and would like to read. Scribd and Audible would also be good for this, like if you want to go through your recommendations or something like that and see what pops up. And then finally we just have two spaces left on this final side of the board. The first one is of course the train station. The buzzwords for this one aren't really buzzwords. This one is a super easy one. It is read any book that has the words the, of, a, and or an in the title. That is like super common across all genres, so that is like probably one of the easiest spaces on the board. And the final one is most recent purchase, and this is to read the last book that you acquired. If you don't buy books, if you borrow from the library, it can be the last book you borrowed from the library, it can be the last book you received as an ARC from the publisher to review. It doesn't have to be purchased, it just has to be the last book that was added to your TBR through whatever means it was added. So now that we have covered everything that you pretty much need to know, I'm just going to be going through a few additional things. The first one is that I will mainly be hanging out on Twitter over the month, I imagine. I don't really know yet. I haven't been using Twitter as much, but I don't like Instagram in terms of running a readathon. But I would recommend, if you do have Twitter, to follow Becca's Bookopoly. I will be retweeting things on there, like people's TBRs, people's vlogs, and all of that kind of stuff. Also, any announcements through the month for things like reading sprints. In terms of reading sprints for September, I'm going to be doing 2 sets of live sprints per week. I'm going to be doing 1 live sprint session on my channel. I will vary the days of when these happen, and I will also probably be having some bookish friends on there with me as well. And the second set of reading sprints I will be doing for my patrons, because I do generally do live reading sprints weekly on Patreon anyway. All of those sprints are going to be dice sprints. If you participated last year, you'll know what dice sprints are. But dice sprints are my way of doing sprints, once again based on Bookopoly, where I roll 2 6-sided die. Every dot on the die represents 5 minutes, and that's how long the sprint is going to be. And if we roll a double, we have to switch books. The other way that you can connect during the readathon is to join us over on Discord. The Discord is a great place to be. There are a ton of people in there who get really excited and are in there all throughout the month, and we have a whole ton of sections over there. So we have spaces for people to post their Boujo spreads, because everyone's Boujo spreads are so beautiful. We also have a section for like TBRs and vlogs, and all of these spaces on the board are split up by category, so people will post in there what they're going to be reading and also be helping people out with recommendations. So if you're stuck for something to read for a particular prompt, you can go to that section of the Discord and see what other people have suggested or what other people are reading to fulfill that prompt. So the link for the Twitter and the Discord will be down in my description box for you guys if you would like to join us on any platform. And then of course, if you are subscribed to my channel, you will get notifications of when I'm going live for sprints. And the last thing I have to show you guys is that this year the BookoplAthon has its very own candle. So a lot of you guys know that my job is that I make bookish candles. I also make candles for readathons, however I never make a candle for my own readathon. So some of you guys requested this, so this year there is a 2021 BookoplAthon candle. We have a nice diced background on there. It has the hashtag and also the logo from the board, and the scent on this one is toffee, honey, orange, vanilla, and bergamot. If any of you guys shop at Lush and are familiar with Honey I Wash My Hair or Honey I Wash the Kids, that is the fragrance in this candle. It's a duplicate of that fragrance. So if you guys would like to get your hands on a candle, they are going to go on sale on my website, which is linked down in the description box, at 6 p.m. BST this coming Friday, which I believe is the 20th of August. And if you are an EU customer, I cannot ship to the EU from my website anymore, but they will be available on Etsy. If you miss the first batch, don't worry, I will do at least 1 more batch of these if they do sell out, and I will announce when that is going to go live as well, so you can try and snag it then if you missed it. So I think that that is all of the information that you need. As usual, if there is a commonly asked question in the comments, I will add those questions to my description box. So if you do have a question, please check there before asking it, but I will try to get back to everyone. When you're posting your TBRs and your vlogs, etc., please do at the Twitter so that I can retweet them. And I'm also going to be making a playlist of Bookopoly TBRs that will help you out with that steal a book prompt, so it would be helpful if you tagged me in that, so I at least have a chance of seeing it. I know I'm going to miss some, but I'm going to try and get as many as possible into that playlist, so you guys have lots of options if you land on the steal a book prompt. If you have liked this video, please don't forget to like if you liked it, and subscribe if you wanna. If you head to my description box, you'll find links to my Goodreads, Instagram, and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my bookish candle website, the Etsy and Instagram for that, and a 10% off discount code. But that is it from me today, guys, and as always, may the rolls be ever in your favor. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you will go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.